When was the last time that you convinced yourself of something? You made up your mind. You were absolutely, positively sure. You could feel it in your bones that the decision you were about to make or have just made was the right one. All the voices in your head were all telling you at the same time, do it, do it, do it. You could see no other path in your future. Now, oftentimes we think about this sort of convincing, and we think this has to do with big things in our life. It has to do with our spouse. Maybe it has to do with our career. Should we have children? And all of these big events in our life require lots of decision-making power and lots of convincing within our own heads. But what about the day-to-day? What about the smaller things in your life? What about when you decided what you were going to wear when you woke up this morning? I tried on 4 or 5 shirts before I decided on this one. What about when you decided who you were going to sit next to in the building today? All of these things require a certain amount of convincing. And what we tend to do is we tend to convince ourselves, and we tend to develop ideas and opinions based on beliefs that we hold, beliefs about ourselves and beliefs about others. But where do these beliefs come from? And that's what I really want to talk about today. As we start to think about the things that we do each and every day, and we start to think about what is our decision process, I guarantee we all have little talk tracks that go on in the back of our minds. Sometimes they're really quiet and you can barely hear them. And sometimes they're screaming out, asking you to make the decision. And it really depends on what's in front of you. The thing is that a lot of this convincing happens without us knowing. Now, I met a little girl called Emily and her mother the other day when I was at the grocery store. And we were standing in the queue, and Emily and her mom were in front of us. And Emily, beautiful little girl, she's probably about 5 years old, nice, long, curly hair, big, huge brown eyes. And she had chocolate ice cream all over her face and all down her yellow dress. And I was standing in the queue, kind of minding my own business, and I kind of caught her out of the corner of my eye. And as I caught her out of the corner of my eye, I noticed she was looking at me. So I would turn around and look at her. She would grab her mother's leg and kind of hide behind her mom, and then peer out, and then disappear again, and then peer out the other side, and then disappear again. And this carried on for a couple minutes. And her mom says to me, "Oh, don't worry, Emily's just shy." And there it was, the label that her mother had been putting on her little pride and joy for the last 5 years of her life. And I said to her mother, I said, "I'll bet she's not shy. I'll bet she just isn't confident with herself yet." And almost as if I'd scripted it, Emily popped out behind her mom's leg, looked up at me again, and her mom looked at me and said, or looked at Emily rather, and said, "Emily, are you shy?" Emily puffed up her chest. She says, "No," and then dashed behind her mom's leg again. She looked at me again, and we kind of smiled, and then they went on their way, and I went on my way. And the thing that struck me about that exchange is how we inadvertently put labels on people, how we inadvertently put labels on ourselves. And I see it all the time. I see it with parents and children. I see it with spouses. I see it with coworkers. And it's these labels and this internal dialogue that I really want to dig in today. Because what happens is as we start to develop these labels, we start to live by these labels. And then we find it very difficult to move outside of these labels. So what I want to talk about is how do we do that? I want to talk about what I call the incremental mind shift. Now, the incremental mind shift is allowing yourself to take those little tiny steps in a direction until you get to where you want to go. And a lot of people talk about positive psychology, and a lot of people talk about great self-help books you should read and great things that you should do, but nobody really gives you kind of the how-tos. And so that's what I want to do today. So as we think about mind shift, it has an awful lot to do with our mindset. And for little Emily, Her mindset was that of being shy. And now, James Clear had said that we often convince ourselves that massive success requires massive effort. And he goes on to talk about making incremental habit changes. And I really agree with him here, but I think it has to start with your mindset. I think it has to start with understanding how to change, because it's those little changes that will net max results. Now, as we start to look at our mindset, oftentimes we don't even realize how we're taking in the world. We don't even realize what those talk tracks are in the back of our head. We don't even realize the things we tell ourselves over and over and over again. And as we develop these talk tracks, as we develop these labels, what we tend to do is we tend to decide that everybody's giving a set amount of skills, a set amount of attributes, a set amount of intelligence, and we have to work within the boundaries of what we've been given. Carol Dweck calls this a fixed mindset. And we have fixed mindsets in lots of different areas in our life. And the fixed mindset will drive you to a position where you have a fixed skill set. I'll never be able to do this new task I'm trying to do. I'll never get that promotion at work. Gosh, I'll never be able to stand in front of a room like this and talk to all these people. And these talk tracks just go over and over and over again in the back of our head. And the little man or woman that lives in our head with, the label maker in one hand and the megaphone in the other hand, labeling everything and then telling you how he's labeled it, doesn't always serve you the way you want to be served. And so there is an alternative to the fixed mindset, and that's what we call the growth mindset. And the growth mindset says that everything's a learning experience. The growth mindset says, no, we don't have a limited set of skills. We don't have a limited set of attributes. We don't even have a limited set of intelligence. We can learn from everything we do. We can learn from every experience we have. We can learn and grow, and we then don't have to be afraid of failing at anything, because everything we do then becomes a learning experience. And now, as we think about growth mindset and we think about how do we start to develop that, I just want to give you a couple of tools. And what I want to do is I want to teach you how to spy on your mind. And I'm going to use this acronym, SPY, to introduce you to a bit of a methodology to help you to start to move into a different mindset. And I'm going to start with the first letter, S, which stands for separate. Now, what I mean by this is when we start to separate the information in the talk tracks in the back of our heads, then we start to understand where our beliefs may be coming from. And we start to understand how we can challenge those beliefs. I have to tell you, I absolutely, positively hate flat pack furniture. Hate it. And every time a piece of flat pack furniture comes into my house, it is an emotional experience. A few choice words, at least one or more coffee breaks before I even get started. And then I open the box and I lay all of the parts out on the floor and all the little tiny screws and washers and fixings. And I stand back and I see all the tab A's and the slot B's and I thumb through the instructions and I absolutely freak out. Freak out entirely. And I just get overwhelmed. I think, oh my God, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do this. And the more I get overwhelmed, the more freaked out I get. And then the more I feel like I'm a failure, I'm never going to build this. And then as I continue down that thought pattern, eventually I end up putting things upside down, and I end up building really wobbly furniture. Because I haven't separated my emotions from my actions in that particular instance. Anybody ever gone on a diet? Starting Monday? All right, starting Monday, this is what I'm going to do. I need to lose some weight, so I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week, and I'm going to run 3 times a week, and I'm going to enter a 5K, and I'm going to stop eating between meals, and I'm not going to drink anymore, and we get overwhelmed, like I do when I see flat pack furniture. Right? And this happens in our business life. Starting Monday, I'm really going to organize my business life. I'm going to go in, I'm going to clean out my desk drawers, I'm going to clean out my email box because there's a bunch of stuff in there that I know I don't need, and I'm going to stop wasting time doing meaningless tasks, and I'm going to be nice to my boss, I'm going to be nice. And we can't separate. So as we start to learn how to separate our feelings from our actions, we do a couple of things. First of all, we start to disconnect what's called our default mode network in our head. So psychologists call this our default mode network, which is the things that we automatically do when we see something, for instance. I see flat pack furniture, I freak out. That's my default mode network, right? What I've decided is, in my head, if I see a piece of flat pack furniture, then I'm going to go have a cup of coffee. And then when I come back, I'm calm and cool and collected, and I can be successful at the task at hand. Because what I've done is I've just given myself a little bit of space, and I've separated the talk tracks that are going on in my head, and I've separated all of my emotion from all of my action. My default network starts to change, and we can start to change our default network as we separate. Now the P in SPY stands for patterns. And so this follows on from separation. And as we start to separate our feelings from our actions, we can then start to detect patterns. We can start to see, oh, every time I do this thing, I act this way. And as we start to identify those patterns, we start to make note of those patterns. We start to then look at those patterns through the lens of separation. We start to reprogram our default network. And then all of a sudden, we're setting ourselves up for learning experiences. We're setting ourselves up for a real growth mindset. And we're moving ourselves in a direction of positivity in the things that we do in our life. Right? And remember little Emily, who was just shy. What sort of pattern is being developed in Emily's head? Imagine Emily when she's 17 years old, getting ready to have her very first college interview, and she's just shy. Or she's 26 and she goes to her very first job interview, and she's shy. And what do these patterns do to us? And we don't even realize how easy it is for us to convince ourselves of these things. And we convince ourselves all day long. So when we start to understand these patterns, we start to look at them through the lens of separation, our whole life changes. And these two things set us up for the most important mind shift of all, and that's the why, which is yet everything. What do I mean by that? Notice the explanation points behind that. Yet everything. What I mean is, little Emily just isn't confident yet. Right? And as soon as we start to yet the things in our lives, then all of a sudden our life becomes a real adventure. There are no stumbling blocks in front of us. I just haven't mastered the piano yet. I'd really like to be able to speak in front of a group, but I'm just not there yet. And then all of a sudden, as we develop the yet mind shift, everything changes. So as we develop and we start to think about how we can yet our lives, what are the things that you're looking at in your life that you're thinking, gosh, I'll never be able to do that. I'll never get that promotion at work. No, you just haven't got it yet. I'll never be able to take that leap of faith and go out and buy a new house with my partner. Well, you just haven't bought a new house yet. I'll never be able to actually make that change in my career that I've been wanting to change for my entire life. Well, you just haven't made that change yet. And as we learn how to yet everything, all of a sudden, our minds do start to shift. And these 3 small incremental mind shifts that you can start doing right now, today, before you even leave this room, you can start to separate your emotions from your actions. You can start to understand the patterns in your self-talk and your talk tracks, and you can start to understand where your beliefs are coming from and how to change those beliefs. And then you can get on a path of yet, and you can start yetting everything in your life. So I just want to leave you with this. Yet is nothing to be afraid of. In fact, people that achieve greatness aren't without fear. People that achieve greatness step out on the ledge anyway. Have you found your ledge yet? Have you stepped out onto that ledge yet? And I spy, with my little eye, somebody who's already started making incremental mind shifts. Is it you? I bet it is. Thank you.